Started out thinking that looks like me in the morning, and then thought, oh no,
No,
I'm not
maybe
anything
not.
like that. Yeah.
Let's start the business
Rather
here
him
in
than me.
France. A key goal missed for François Hollande. Nothing about eating caterpillars, though.
No, he had promised over and over again that he would be able to reverse the trend of rising unemployment by the end of 2013. And the figures out from the Labour Ministry here in France yesterday showed that he didn't manage to do it. In fact, the number of people out of work hit a record high of 3.3 million in December. This as the French government tries to implement its responsibility pact with businesses, aiming to create more jobs by cutting payroll taxes. Jonathan Crane has the story.
This time, the French government lost its bet, unable to reverse the unemployment trend in 2013. In December, jobless claims rose by a further 10,200, putting the number of people out of work at just over 3.3 million, the largest total since records started. French President François Hollande, on a visit to Ankara, spoke before the figures were released.
Stabilisation, which is what we have achieved, is not enough. What we need is a decrease, a reversal.
One piece of good news, the number of job seekers among under 25-year-olds dropped by 2,300 in December, continuing a steady fall in this category, thanks largely to state-subsidised schemes focused on getting young people into work. But the number of jobless aged between 25 and 49 increased in December, as did the figures for those 50 and above, with a further 9,500 people in this age group now seeking work. The French Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault welcomed the figures but believes more must be done.
Stabilizing unemployment and declining youth unemployment are not enough. Obviously, it must go further, faster and more strongly.
Under pressure from unions to reverse the trend, the government announced a business-friendly policy shift last month. Among the measures, companies will receive tax and social security breaks in return for taking on new staff.
Now, just before those figures were announced, in fact, some job cuts from Airbus were revealed by unions here in France. We had heard back in December that the aerospace giant Airbus was to cut more than 5,000 jobs around the world, but it wasn't certain where those jobs would go. We now know that the 1,400 of them will go here in France. That's not quite as many as in Germany, though, where 2,500 jobs are going to be cut, 700 in Britain and some 500 in Spain. Those details coming from unions at Airbus.
Several of the markets then, Stephen.
Now, well, things have been looking a bit more stable on the Asian markets today, this after the recent falls that we've seen. Fears over emerging markets and what's happening with their currencies, particularly looking at Argentina, in fact, had led to a bit of a fall on the markets, a bit of a panic, in fact, among some investors. Investors mostly focused today on Turkey and the Turkish Central Bank and whether or not their emergency policy meeting might help to boost the value of the lira. You can see everyone fairly flat in trading on the Asian markets today.
Useful mention of Turkey because we're going there next. The French president is continuing his official visit there.
Yeah, the French share of the Turkish market, focus of course on the economy today, the French share of the Turkish market has fallen over the past 10 years. François Hollande hoping to turn that around in his visit there. He's brought with him a delegation of 40 business leaders in the hope of some lucrative deals to be secured while he's there. Let's go now to Istanbul and speak to our correspondent there, Padraig Rowan, who has been looking at this story for us. What sort of deals are we expecting François Hollande to come up with today then?
Yes, well, many were signed yesterday. France is currently the sixth biggest investor in Turkey already, and several important trade deals yesterday will increase that clout. Infrastructure and energy deals were signed, most noticeably a deal for a French consortium to help build Turkey's second nuclear power plant. And of course, there are meetings today with a host of Turkish businessmen, and that will also pay dividends. But over and above this, Hollande is also keen to boost French soft power here, to use the EU accession process to keep Turkey on a reformist path, and also to address the Armenian issue. Today, Hollande will meet this afternoon in Istanbul with Raquel Dink, the widow of the Turkish-Armenian journalist Hrant Dink, who was assassinated 7 years ago. Now, this is sure to raise the hackles of Turkish nationalists. But Hollande is definitely pushing that soft power as well as the economic power.
Indeed, hoping to lead with the carrot, as it were. And while we have you, Padraig, if I can ask you as well about what we were saying about the Turkish Central Bank, their meeting today, the Turkey's lira, one of those currencies hit by this recent flight from emerging markets. What are we expecting from that meeting today?
Yes, this emergency meeting, when it was called, that was seen as a clear sign, a clear signal that the central bank is going to raise interest rates. Now, we won't know until midnight Turkish time tonight whether that is actually the case. But just the news of the announcement itself boosted the value of the lira somewhat against the euro and the dollar. Of course, the lira has and is still at record lows against the euro and the dollar. Now, Turkey is not the only one in this boat, of course. Many emerging economies have been hard hit by the U.S. Federal Reserve's tapering of the so-called quantitative easing program. But this comes at an especially bad time for the Turkish government. It always had the economy on its side for most of the past decade. But with the political trouble here currently, the economic problems could add a lot more trouble for the government.
OK, Padraig Rowan in Istanbul, thank you for that.
And thank you to Stephen as well with today's business news. Now then, a 2-year-old skateboarding champ coming up for you is the video of the day. What a surprise in today's web.